Alrighty, so the first thing that I looked at was the John Pink video. And basically he talked about an experiment that was held in basically around the ideas of motivation and rewards. And basically what they did, they set up certain tasks for people to do and had a tiered reward system, like small reward, medium reward, big reward. And basically what they found out was that motivation doesn't seem to work the way we think it does. The mechanical tasks that they were trying to motivate them by rewarding them, those seem to be directly correlated with the reward. The higher performance levels correlated with higher reward levels. However, as soon as anything required actual thought, things kind of just went completely awry. They did the experiment twice. The second time they did it in India, and both times the highest reward level for actions that required cognitive thought were actually the worst performing. So, very interesting. Very interesting. It definitely shows that motivation and reward definitely don't work the way mainstream society seems to think it does. Because these people clearly weren't directly motivated by the money they were being offered. The people in India were being offered up to like a month, 3 months, 6 months salary to perform these tasks, and it was not going well for the ones that are being offered the most, excuse me. So what does this mean? This means that we can't always try to basically bribe our students into performing better. We might not be able to use the reward system that we thought we could in order to motivate our students. So there seems to be 3 things that actually motivate us other than reward, and those are autonomy, which is basically self-direction, being able to decide what you're doing on your own, mastery, which is getting better at stuff, and purpose, so basically like your work having an overall point. The next thing we looked at was John Medina and the 3rd and 4th chapter of Brain Rules. The first thing we looked at was wiring, which is basically like the physical things that happen with your brains and your neurons and stuff that cause learning to occur. So basically neurons are responsible for the brain's learning activity, and they're constantly getting bigger, they're swelling, they're splitting, they're forging new paths, they're creating new roads. And Eric Kandel discovered this by, he studied slug brains, he cut them open after they were dead, and predating that, this guy Vincenzo Malacarne in the 18th century, he would teach birds things, and that he would have a whole set of birds. Half of them he would teach things, and the other half he would not. And then once he would kill them and then cut their heads open, he discovered that like the ones that learned things had different looking brains than the ones that didn't. That was cool. So what does this mean? This means that the act of learning is a super physical activity. It's something that we physically do. It's not completely abstract. It's a physical activity that our brain engages in, which is really cool. So basically the brain is like a muscle, and it reacts to how you exercise it. For example, if somebody skips leg day every week and just focuses on, their upper body. Friends don't let friends skip leg day, but sometimes you do. That person is going to end up looking like they're very top heavy with very little muscle definition in their legs. The brain is the same way. You work it out like it's a muscle. And as an infant, we are born actually with the same amount of neurons as we have as an adult. And actually, as we get a little bit older, when we're still like a baby, we have double or triple the amount of neuron connections. And then the journey from baby to adolescent to full-grown adult is like a constant progression of these neurons being either growing one way or another, being pruned in another direction, and basically it's just shaping the pathways of your brain. So what is the Jennifer Aniston neuron? What are they talking about? This is actually very amusing. There's an experiment being performed right now, basically. They have isolated a neuron that when you're in not so much surgery, they're doing this experimentally, they have you open, your brain's open and exposed to the air, and there's a neuron that they've isolated that will respond only when a person sees an image of Jennifer Aniston. So they basically have discovered that they found a piece of the brain that was basically created because this person knows about Jennifer Aniston. That's obviously has nothing to do with like evolution or anything like that. So what does this mean? This means that the pathways in our brain are not something that basically it's not something that we evolved into. It's something that's constantly changing. It's something that that's very much not hardwired. It's not set in stone. Something that we affect every time we have a new experience. I mean, they also found, I think it was in a guy, they found a neuron that reacts to Halle Berry. They found a neuron that reacts to Bill Clinton. So, what does this mean? Everybody's brain maps are different because every single one of us has a different set of life experiences, a different set of, everything. And everyone stores information differently because our roadmaps in our brain are different. Everyone develops at a different rate, that is for sure. All you have to do is look at a first grade classroom and see all the different sizes, shapes, and like learning levels of kids to see that everyone develops at a different rate. So how can we take this into the classroom? One, you can have smaller class sizes because as a teacher, you need to sort of know where your kids are in the greater realm of learning. And with larger class sizes, you don't get to differentiate as much. You don't get to know as much of each student's little learning quirks. So smaller class sizes help. Number two, customize instruction because nobody learns the exact same way as another person. So that is obviously made a little bit easier with the smaller class sizes. So the next thing we talked about was attention. We don't pay attention to boring things, and that's the truth. So Medina opened up by talking about how he asked his class, his students, like, when do you sort of like zone out? When do you stop paying attention? And they basically said about 10 minutes. So he went from that and he said, how can I basically make the most out of my 10 minutes and then like rehook them after like 9 minutes and 59 seconds to make sure they buy into another 10 minutes of paying attention. So he came up with memory, so sort of teaching them things in a way that would trigger old memories. Two, interest. Obviously, you want to be teaching them something that is of interest to them, something that they can connect with. And three, awareness. You have to sort of draw them in and make them aware of what you're trying to teach. So, and then there's 4 things that he says we need to be aware of when we're trying to rehook them, basically, trying to get them to pay attention for that 10 minutes. One thing you can use to hook them is emotions. For example, if you get someone a little bit worked up about what you're trying to teach, they're more likely to pay attention, which is why I know personally when I was in school, whenever it was like a controversial topic, I always paid attention more because, my emotions were involved. I had an opinion about it. So second thing, we are much, much, much better at creating meaning and connections and memorizing those than we are at remembering the details. Our brains are hardwired to try to make connections. You see this in visual thinking theory, color theory. Like any art class, basically they teach you how many things you can leave out of a piece of art and still force the brain to see what you want it to see. our brain wants to make sense of what of the information it's taking in, and you definitely have to take advantage of that. 3, the brain cannot physically multitask, cannot do it. It doesn't. The multitasking does not exist. The multitasking that we think exists is actually just us going from thing to thing and sort of half giving our attention to one thing, half giving our attention to the other, but not really paying attention to any of it. Our brain cannot do that. So it's fruitless to try to make somebody do it. And 4, our brains need breaks. You need to take a break every once in a while. He talked about how he quoted someone as saying, like, our teachers try to overload our students with too much information all at once, and it's just go, 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 go. And he said that, that's not good. Our brains do need breaks. So how can we take this into the classroom? One thing he suggested is that in your lecture design, you should design it to be in 10-minute segments. So you need to bait the hook, quote unquote, at 9 minutes 59 cents. You need to get them to buy in to listening to you speak for another 10 minutes. You need to convince them that their time is worth it. But basically, it is worth their time to listen to you for another 10 minutes. And 3, don't try to make the students multitask. It's not going to go well. Alrighty, so what does this mean for me? I think for me, what I'm going to take away from this is the biggest thing is definitely the 10-minute design for lectures. I think that's great. I remember lectures that were definitely broken up into smaller parts, and I remember them more fondly than the ones that seemed to go for a straight 3 hours without break. So that's definitely something that I'm going to take into account when I'm planning things. I'm going to try to remember those hooks for sure. I'm going to try to remember to hook kids, try to get them to sort of reinvest every we'll say 8 to 10 minutes. We'll say I want them to reinvest in paying attention to me. So a lot of these things were really interesting, and I really also enjoyed the stuff about motivation and reward. That kind of stuff is very interesting to me. I have a secret enjoyment of economics, so the whole motivation and reward thing is definitely very, very interesting. So thank you for taking the time to watch my Prezi, and I hope you guys have a great weekend. Thanks.